A Kentucky state representative was called out by a columnist after making the bizarre claim that her father was a slave. Now, State Representative Jennifer Decker, pictured here, okay, who sponsored a bill to eliminate educational opportunities and programs based on race, went before the Shelbyville area NAACP. So, a crowd of mostly black Americans a week and a half ago, and during a question and answer session about whether any member of her family played a role in the slave trade, she responded that her father was a slave. Quote, "My father was born on a dirt farm in Lincoln County," said Decker, a 68-year-old attorney. "His mother was the illegitimate daughter of a very prominent person who then was kind enough to allow them to work for him as slaves. So if you're asking, did we own slaves? My father was a slave, just to a white man, and he was white." Wait, who owned the slaves in this in the United States? Yeah, it wasn't black people. No, it was white people. Okay, but they own black people. But she's saying, oh no, it was a white slave owner that owned my father, another white man. See, yeah. Wait, hold on. The math does not quite add up here on this claim. You see, slavery was abolished in this country in 1865, the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Decker is 68. Decker's father, a white preacher, was born sometime around 1933. Okay, that was 68 years after the 13th Amendment officially ended slavery in this country. So, no, your father, hate to say it, not a slave. Okay. Now, columnist Joseph Girth wrote about this. Here's what he said. Quote, "It was a moment that in many ways proved how badly diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, this year's chosen boogeyman of Kentucky right-wing politicians, are needed in Kentucky schools." Yes, just imagine had she actually learned any of this stuff. Y'all need some critical race theory, okay? Jesus Christ. Oh, all right. He continued, "Such diversity programs weren't around when Decker was in school. Very obvious. If they had been, she might have learned that few white people in America, short of those who have been trafficked for sex, should ever claim something like that. It's deeply offensive to those who are descendants of actual slaves to hear a white person claim that they're descendants of a slave." Again, Girth just, completely wrecking her. Okay, I love it. With facts, so very well written. All right, I love it, but it gets better. So the columnist then asked Decker to clarify her comments on slavery. Her response, you're going to love this, was her repeating the word irrelevant. Irrelevant. Girth said that only confused him more, so he asked whether slavery was irrelevant. Again, this is a question and answer session on whether or not her family had participated in the slave trade, okay? So it was a member of the audience at the NAACP event that asked, and she responded with, well, my dad was a slave. So wait, how is slavery irrelevant then? It's literally the entire question and your answer. So Decker said, no, it's not irrelevant what slavery is, but it's shifting the focus from what we're talking about. What do you mean? What you're talking about was slavery. Girth then asked her again to clarify what she meant by claiming her white father had been a slave in the middle of the 20th century. And he said her answer seemed to indicate that his family had actually been tenant farmers. Oh, okay. No, she said, well, my father was born into poverty. There was a very influential man who allowed them property, and then they worked on it. So now, here's the thing, right? So that's tenant farming, which was fairly common back in the olden days, okay? Now, Decker said that her family's, father's family were not paid for their labor, okay? And she admitted, when pressed, that she, quote, probably overstated her claim.
Oh my God, he admitted.
Or in this case, she. Oh, you probably overstated the claim. That's an understatement, actually. Wow. Okay, so now tenant farmers, way different than being enslaved, obviously. Okay, so a tenant farmer will, yes, work land that is not theirs. Okay, so the land is usually, again, there's the landlord, whatever, they'll say, okay, look, you can go ahead and you can work the farm. Okay, now in exchange for free room and board, right? So you get to live in this house, and you know, you're going to give us a portion of your crops in return. So that's going to cover rent. Okay, so instead of you paying for rent, it's your labor that's being used. Roughly half of your crop is I'm going to take it in return for letting you live there, and then you get the rest of that crop to do whatever you want. You can sell it on the market. You can use it. It doesn't matter. Like, okay. And not only that, but for tenant farmers, usually that rent isn't as high, so they don't take as much. Again, because tenants usually bring their own tools and animals to work the land. So they're not supplied by the actual landlord. Okay. Now, if that is supplied by the landlord, then you're actually a sharecropper. And so you actually get far less of the rewards. You still get, of course, of your labor. You still end up working the land, of course. But majority, if not all of your crop, ends up going back to the landlord. So sharecropping is not slavery, but it is a step above. Okay. It's still not a great system. All right. And of course, in the South, that's generally what a lot of freedmen, okay, freed former black slaves ended up doing. Okay. In fact, look, about 2/3 of sharecroppers were African American. All right. And so now, not the same as slavery. Very, very clear. All right. Clearly established that she was wrong. Then Decker continued by saying, quote, "Was I saying that it was kidnapping and abuse the same as the slaves? No, he was a child and his family all worked there." But yes, that's generally what tenant farmers had done. Their family would assist in working the land, okay, in exchange for, again, half the crop and being able to live there. So you're saying that it's not slavery. Well, there you go. You got it. Thank you for admitting it. Wow, that took a while to drag out, okay? To drag that answer out of you took some time and some doing. Now, Girth, of course, was not happy with her answer, writing this, quote, "So Decker's father was forced by his parents to do chores, and that's what made him a slave? I suppose any of us who washed dishes, cut grass, or took out the garbage were slaves, according to Decker's definition." Again, very succinct, good writing, and accurately portrayed her position on this. And here's the thing. It points out a bigger issue among Southern white Republicans. Okay? Again, this was in Kentucky, right? You have these people that continue to try to redefine slavery. Okay? Now, either whether or not that's because they're just ignorant of the past, I wouldn't be surprised. Our education system, not exactly the greatest in teaching these things. In fact, Republicans have made sure that their education systems kind of skip out or downplay slavery and the effects of it. So again, you have people that grow up and they're like, I don't know, a slave is fine. It's just like sharecropping. It's just like being a tenant farmer. What? No. But although she seems to know that there was kidnappings and violence, and there was also rape, and there was just, again, you're owning literal human beings. Okay, it's a horrible thing. But to think that this woman could, legitimately believe that she could use this answer to a majority black audience and not get called out for it, because her response was irrelevant, irrelevant, irrelevant. Nope, completely relevant to what you were talking about. That is something to see. So I don't know if it was just ignorance on her part or just the fact that she was out there trying to willingly downplay slavery, even knowing the horrible truth about it. I can't say for certain. I don't know what's in her head, right? But I do know that it was a terrible answer. And I'm glad that Girth was there to basically call her out and question her and get her to admit that, yeah, she was BSing and trying to gaslight people into what slavery actually was. And I'm glad she didn't get away with it.